Remember Penny from The Big Bang Theory? Yeah, the bubbly blonde next door who turned every awkward science joke into television gold. Well, brace yourself. Because what happened to her after the cameras stopped rolling is not just shocking, it's downright heartbreaking. I mean, how does someone go from America's favorite sitcom sweetheart to this? Did fame chew her up and spit her out? Did the billion-dollar Big Bang machine hide something way darker behind those laugh tracks? Or was Penny Kaylee another victim of Hollywood's shiny illusion factory? Because let's be honest, we all thought she was living the dream, right? Luxury homes, red carpets, A-list parties. But what if I told you that behind that perfect smile were secrets, scandals, and a collapse so wild it would make even Sheldon quit science? Stick around, because what you're about to hear will flip your whole perception of the Big Bang Golden Girl. And fair warning, this isn't the Penny you thought you knew. This is the Penny Hollywood doesn't want you to see. Grab your popcorn, mute your phone, and prepare to enter the side of showbiz they never air between commercials. This story is about to explode. They say Hollywood makes dreams come true. But what they don't tell you is that it also eats those dreams alive, and if you think that sounds dramatic, wait until you hear what really happened to Kaley Cuoco, the woman we all once knew as Penny from The Big Bang Theory. The same girl who turned awkward science banter into primetime gold and made every geek wish they lived across the hall from her, but behind those million-dollar smiles and record-breaking ratings, there is something darker brewing, something that the producers and networks never wanted you to know. It all began when the final season wrapped and the cameras stopped rolling, and suddenly the laughter that had filled her life for over a decade disappeared overnight. Insiders say Kaley didn't know who she was without Penny, because every inch of her identity had been built around that role. She wasn't just playing Penny, she had become her, and when the applause faded, she found herself in a quiet mansion filled with trophies and silence. One anonymous crew member whispered that after the finale party, she stayed alone in her dressing room for hours just staring at the Penny nameplate on the door, like she couldn't let go of the only person Hollywood ever really loved her as in. And that's where the cracks began to show, because what came next wasn't the Golden Post sitcom life everyone expected. No luxury brand deals, no movie offers worthy of her status. Instead, there were rumors of tension between her and former castmates, gossip about secret feuds, and studio betrayals. Tabloids started whispering that Kaley had burned bridges at Warner Brothers, that her America's sweetheart image was more carefully managed than real, and that maybe, just maybe, the lovable Penny was the biggest act of her life. Sources claimed she demanded script rewrites, clashed with directors, and even froze out certain co-stars over pay disputes. One production assistant reportedly said she could make a grown man cry with a single look when things didn't go her way, but it wasn't all diva behavior. There was pain too, because fame had trapped her in a golden cage she couldn't escape. Imagine spending 12 years being told you're perfect, only to realize you don't know what to do when perfection is over. She tried to reinvent herself, producing darker content, taking roles that broke her bubbly mold, but the internet wasn't having it. People couldn't unsee Penny. They mocked her when she tried to act serious. They said she'd lost her charm. They called her desperate and washed up, and that kind of noise can destroy even the toughest soul. By the time she launched her own projects like The Flight attendant, things seemed to get better on the outside, but those close to her said she was unraveling behind the scenes. One so-called friend leaked messages showing her venting about anxiety, exhaustion, and paranoia about being replaced by younger stars. She felt like Hollywood had moved on without her, and the pressure to stay relevant was crushing her. Someone who once had the world's attention now felt invisible, and that's when she started pulling away, disappearing from public events, skipping interviews, and deleting posts from social media. Fans started asking if something had happened. Some even thought she had gone into hiding, while others speculated about rehab breakdowns and secret scandals. It was like everyone could sense that something was off, but nobody knew what, and the strangest part was how fast her inner circle began to shrink. Friends stopped calling, coworkers distanced themselves, and those who stayed said she became almost obsessed with keeping her private life hidden. One insider claimed she started recording her conversations with people because she didn't trust anyone anymore. Another said she had a wall of notes and photos in her house tracking who leaked stories about her as if she was living in her own mystery thriller. Maybe it was paranoia, or maybe she was right. Maybe someone inside the industry really was trying to bury her career. After all, Hollywood has a habit of creating its stars just to destroy them when they stop playing by the rules, and Kaley was no longer the cheerful sitcom star, smiling on cue. She was asking questions, challenging the system, and that made her dangerous. One executive allegedly said off record she's too loud, she's too honest, and that's when the so-called coincidences started. Her contracts fell through. Her PR team quit without explanation, and her reputation took hit after hit, as if the universe itself had turned against her. But was it the universe, or was it someone pulling strings behind the curtain? That's what makes this story so chilling, because the deeper you look, the clearer it becomes that Penny's fall wasn't an accident. It was a setup, and if the whispers are true, the people she thought were her allies might have been the very ones tightening the noose around her career all along. When the whispers grew louder and the silence around her became heavier, Kaylee tried to make sense of what was happening to her career and her reputation, but every time she tried to fight back, another rumor seemed to appear, as if someone was feeding the machine from inside. People who once called her a friend were suddenly giving interviews about how difficult she was to work with and how fame had changed her. One anonymous producer even told a podcast that she had been caught in a late-night argument on set about money and control, and the clip went viral without anyone verifying if it was real. Her image that had once been built on charm and relatability began to crack like glass under pressure, and instead of the audience laughing with her, they were laughing at her. Her every post became an opportunity for online detectives to twist the narrative, calling her arrogant, washed up, or ungrateful. They said she had lost touch with reality, that she was obsessed with staying in the spotlight. And yet those same critics couldn't stop talking about her. The internet loves a downfall story, and Kaylee's was turning into prime entertainment. But what nobody expected were the leaks that followed. Reports of extravagant parties held in secret villas overseas, wild spending on luxury horses and designer collections flown in from Europe. Anonymous insiders painted her as a reckless millionaire trying to buy back the happiness she lost after the Big Bang finale. One source claimed she spent $2 million on a single private vacation. Another insisted she threw tantrums when staff forgot her specific brand of champagne, and of course, none of it could ever be proven, but the media didn't care. Truth had never been the goal, clicks were, and Kaley Cuoco had become digital gold. Her every scandal reel or invented was headline material. Then came the so-called investigative report that changed everything. A tabloid released documents allegedly showing secret payments between her and a now disgraced Hollywood executive, supposedly to secure a role in a major film that never got made. The article claimed the money vanished, and so did the deal. Instantly, social media exploded with hashtags accusing her of corruption and manipulation. They called it Pennygate, and within hours, everyone from gossip vloggers to late-night hosts had turned it into a running joke. Fans posted memes saying Penny finally broke the universe, and while the world laughed, Kaylee vanished again. She stopped responding to calls. Her team released a short statement calling the allegations false, but the damage was done. Sponsors backed out, and one of her upcoming projects was quietly cancelled. Then an anonymous user online dropped what they called leaked emails between Kaylee and a powerful studio insider, showing her pleading to keep her name out of an internal investigation. Whether those emails were real or fabricated, no one knows, but the narrative was set. She was no longer the beloved sitcom star. She was a headline about betrayal and greed. One entertainment journalist even claimed that law enforcement had been tipped off about potential financial irregularities connected to her production company. And while no charges were ever filed, the implication was enough to bury her reputation further. Meanwhile, people close to her began to notice she was unraveling. She reportedly fired her longtime manager and replaced her entire security team, believing her phones were being monitored. One assistant said she started sleeping in different rooms of her house every night, convinced someone was watching her from the trees outside. Tabloids spun this into tales of paranoia and breakdowns, while fans speculated that Hollywood had broken her completely. But what if she wasn't crazy? What if she was right? Because weeks later, a set of leaked text messages surfaced between two studio executives, joking about how they were glad the public had turned on on her. One message read she'd never work in this town again, and that line was enough to fuel endless online conspiracy videos. Suddenly everyone was questioning whether Kaley Cuoco was the latest casualty of an industry that chews people up and spits them out when they stop smiling. She had gone from adored to accused, from powerful to powerless, and the transformation happened so fast it almost felt orchestrated. Some insiders whispered that she had been targeted for speaking out about unfair contracts. Others believed she simply became too expensive, too independent, too outspoken. Whatever the reason, the result was the same. Hollywood had turned its back on her, and while fans debated the truth, one thing was certain: the woman once known for making the world laugh was now at the center of a storm that showed no sign of ending, and no one seemed to want her side of the story, only the version that sold better. As the chaos surrounding her name reached its peak, Kaley Cuoco found herself standing at the edge of everything she had built her image. Her trust, her sense of belonging, it had all started slipping through her fingers like water, and no amount of denial or explanation could stop the tide from rising. She tried to reach out to people she once worked with, hoping someone would stand up for her, but the silence was deafening. It was as if no one wanted to risk being dragged into her sinking ship. There were reports of her moving out of Los Angeles for a while, staying off the grid in a quiet part of the countryside, far from cameras and gossip, while her lawyers tried to clean up the mess. But the media wasn't done with her. News stories kept emerging about alleged secret settlements, unpaid debts, and even a supposed diary that detailed her meltdowns. At home, none of it was ever confirmed, yet every headline made her look guilty, and the public had already chosen its verdict. She became a symbol of how fast Hollywood can turn love into ridicule, and fame into isolation, and behind the curtains she was fighting battles no one could see. Nights filled with panic attacks, endless calls with lawyers, and the haunting realization that the industry she had given her life to had erased her name from its memory. But there was still a part of her that refused to give up. She started recording videos of herself speaking directly to her fans, not for upload but to remind herself she still existed, that she could still speak her truth. Friends said those recordings showed a woman exhausted yet strangely peaceful, as if she was learning to accept that not every storm can be fought. Some must simply be survived. She began working quietly on smaller projects, producing under a different name, testing if she could build something from scratch without the weight of celebrity attached to it. And slowly people started to notice that maybe she wasn't gone after all, that maybe she had simply stepped away to heal. When a small independent project she backed won an award, it wasn't her fame that drew attention, it was her resilience. She appeared on stage, not as Penny, not as the fallen star, but as herself, speaking softly about strength and starting over. Her voice trembled, but her message was clear, that sometimes losing everything is what finally shows you what matters most. And though the tabloids still tried to pull her back into their circus, she no longer reacted, because she had already learned the harshest truth of all. In Hollywood, the spotlight is never yours to keep, but the light you find within yourself that can never be stolen. And with that realization, Kaley Cuoco quietly began writing her next chapter, away from the noise, away from the betrayal, determined that if the world ever spoke her name again, it would not be as the girl who fell, but as the woman who rose. So now that you know the shocking story behind the woman the world once adored, what do you think really happened to Kaley Cuoco? Was she a victim of Hollywood's ruthless system, or the architect of her own downfall? Is the truth buried under the glitter of fame, or are we all just watching another celebrity destroyed for sport? The rise and fall of Penny from The Big Bang Theory isn't just gossip, it's a mirror showing how fast the world builds idols only to tear them down the moment they stop performing. And maybe that says more about us than it does about her. But one thing's for sure, this story isn't over. So what side are you on? Do you believe Kaley deserves a comeback, or do you think her story is a warning to anyone chasing fame? Before you scroll away, think about what you've seen and heard, and ask yourself who's really pulling the strings in Hollywood. If you want the real truth behind the stars, the scandals, and the stories they don't want you to hear, make sure you like this video, share it before it disappears, and subscribe, because the next secret might be even darker than this one.